Hi everybody, it's Jenn from McCreath. It is Easter weekend and hell must have froze over because I voted for a party I said I'd never vote for again. But you know what? This has been a very strange election campaign. We are living in some very interesting times here in the world. Sometimes it's not who you vote for, it's who you don't vote for. And of course, also here in Canada, we have the Westminster parliamentary system, which means we don't actually vote for the leader. You vote for a local candidate. And it also means that national polling doesn't really matter. The only polling that really matters is in your local riding. So it's been an interesting year. Donald Trump got elected president of the United States, and that kind of led to a major shift in attitudes among Canadian voters here, especially with regards to who we think is best suited to manage Canada through a very rocky 4 years with Trump as president. And we saw the unpopular Trudeau's party, the Liberals, way down in the polls to Poilievre. But Poilievre's mistake, he leans too far to the right. And he's too much like Trump. I've read the policy documents. There's a lot of good ideas, in my opinion, in the Conservatives' platform, but there's also a lot of bad ones too. And there's one that specifically comes close to me personally, and it deals with lack of acceptance for certain type of diversity groups. And we've seen that happen in the U.S., and we've seen how terrible things have become for a lot of oppressed minorities in the United States, whether it's LGBTQ people or whether it's people with different skin colors, so-called illegal immigrants, and even legal immigrants. Donald Trump is even deporting Americans who don't happen to have white skin. And some of the rhetoric coming out of the Poilievre camp, it's too Trumpish, and that's why people have pivoted. Liberals, they went out and made a good move. They got Mark Carney to be their leader, and he brings a lot of different ideologies to the table, of course, than Trudeau. Even I, Jennifer McCreath, who never thought I would support or join the Liberals, technically did join the Liberals for a very short amount of time, because I too wanted Carney to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. And he is now the Prime Minister of Canada. Ironically enough, having never received an actual vote in an election. But now the polls have swung so far that we're getting into that dangerous territory of supermajority. And the longer Carney is in place and the longer this campaign has unfolded, starting to see also that there are some imperfections there. And now that it seems quite clear that Carney and the Liberals are going to win the election, I think it's important for some of us. There's a responsibility to send a good opposition to Ottawa. We know that the Conservatives have their strongholds out west. There's definitely going to be a voice. And quite frankly, it concerns me to see how far all the other parties have fallen in a first-past-the-post system. When people choose to vote strategically and vote against somebody instead of for somebody, this is what usually happens. The top two parties who have dominated Canadian politics since 1867 conveniently have kept the system that way because they know it helps them. Well, you know what? I think it's important that we send some third parties and even some fourth parties to Ottawa because they represent different ideologies and different voices. I listened to those debates, and believe it or not, Jagmeet Singh, in my opinion, won those debates. He seems to be the only one that's talking about the big elephant in the room, the problems of inflation, people losing their jobs, people losing job security, people having to take pay cuts, people losing hours, businesses that are suffering because of still from COVID or because of the tariffs. And you know what? I get it, the NDP's not going to win very many seats, but you know what? They do have a chance to win a few. And quite frankly, one of those seats is right here, St. John's East. And having looked over the bios and histories of the various candidates running here in St. John's East, I got to be honest, Mary Shortall passes that litmus test. Yeah, it's no secret. Jennifer McCreath and the NDPs have not always gotten along. But you know what? I think Mary Shortall is, in fact, the best candidate in St. John's East. If I wanted to send someone to Ottawa to advocate or argue on my behalf for something, Mary Shortall is the person I would pick out of the 5 people on that ballot. I still have questions and concerns that all 3 major parties picked their candidates more than a year before the election. And I have serious concerns about some of the more recent candidate selections in some of the other ridings in Newfoundland. In fact, it was the parachuting in of Don Bradshaw that led me to decide to quit the federal Liberal Party, amazingly enough. I thought that that's not the way to do it. Likewise, Steve Kent is someone I actually consider a friend, but I have concerns that he was also parachuted into a riding. So I hate to say this, folks, I'm going to encourage you not to vote for these parachuted candidates, because that's not appropriate. These people were thrown in there without due process. Bottom line, I'm voting. I voted. I already did. Very sneaky, but a good idea that they had advanced polling on Good Friday right next to the fish and chip store. And of course, you know, Newfoundlanders love their Friday fish and chips, especially on Good Friday. So I went out and had my fish at Chess's. Big shout out to one of their food prep, Gord, a good friend of mine. The fish was great. And we voted for Mary Shortall. And if you're in St. John's East, let's send at least one NDPer to Ottawa. I don't know how many seats they're going to get, but that's why I voted for Mary. I think we need at least a few NDPers in Ottawa. Most ridings are Conservative or Liberal. Here's one riding where the NDP has a shot at it. Secondly, Joanne Thompson, you've lost my support. I've heard a lot of stories about how you are not engaging your constituents. You haven't returned phone calls or emails. And quite frankly, the latest debacle, they made you Minister of Fisheries, and quite frankly, I think you're the worst Minister of Fisheries we've ever had in Canada. You don't deserve a second term, and you certainly don't deserve that gold-plated pension. So yet another reason I am not voting for Joanne Thompson. David Brazel, a good friend, nice guy, polling third, and got to be honest, I have this kind of rule. If you're elected as a provincial politician and you don't serve your term, if you quit, I don't think you should be allowed back. So sorry, David Brazel, and you, Tom Osborne, another one who quit. You won as a provincial MHA, and then you quit to take a job, something to do with student milk associations. You should not do that and then come back into the politics. If you don't want to be in politics, then don't quit. So there you have it, folks. Mary Shortall gets my vote, St. John's East. Doesn't mean I'm an NDPer again. It just means I prefer Mary Shortall over the others. But this is not a case of plugging my nose. Mary is a legitimate good candidate and a good person, and I really hope she wins this seat. And so one more time, if you live in St. John's East, vote for Mary Shortall. And this is Jennifer McCreath saying, have a great Easter weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.